Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We're here with Dr. Lisa Ganjhu, who will be speaking to us about some of the issues with women and wine. Now, we all like to drink a little wine here and there, but we are seeing that wine is being marketed to women, and that women are drinking wine a lot more than they did, say, even 10 years ago. So would you care to talk to us about what you're seeing? Some of the research that I've been looking at has talked about the fact that pretty much upper middle class white women are doing a lot of drinking, but it's also rising in terms of women of color as well. So what is it that you see?
I really don't think there's any cultural difference. I'm seeing a lot of alcohol abuse amongst all cultures. I think there's a lot more exposure to alcohol because women are out in the workforce, they're entertaining their clients, so they're going one-to-one with their male compadres at work. So they're entertaining, they're out being more social.
But some of these women are mothers, you know? There have been instances of moms who've actually killed people because they've been, you know, they're drunk and they end up driving kids to soccer games and they have accidents and that kind of thing. So some of these women have stepped away from careers and are also.
So are these stay-at-home moms?
Yeah, stay-at-home moms, yeah.
Well, there's a social acceptance of drinking nowadays, that it's okay to have your alcohol, it's okay to use it as a stress reliever, and it's really not. It really shouldn't be used as a stress reliever. But I think culturally we know that alcohol is for entertainment, for relaxation. Unfortunately, some people use it as medication to dull pain, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical. And there should be an awareness, but there's more of a trying to put it behind them almost, and kind of making it acceptable. But I think.
So do you mean like masking their problems and hiding behind it?
Absolutely. Alcoholism, alcohol abuse, whatever you want to say, does mask underlying problems. I mean, it started off as being a social issue or a social lubricant, as they may say, so that you can have a good time, but then it just kind of crosses over to just coping. And people need a little bit of wine just to get them to cope through the day. And it is sad when you hear young moms that need to have some wine or some alcohol just to help them cope with their toddler or with their child. And I think that's where we're seeing where play dates are turning, like where the kids are playing and the moms are having a glass of wine. If it's not happening in reality, it's happening on TV. We're seeing a lot of that.
But can't this sort of sneak up on you? Meaning, you know, oftentimes, you know, you look at television and you see these glamorous women or sophisticated women and they're drinking. And to some who aren't maybe conscious of their actions, they may see this as the thing to do. And then it turns into this problem that they have.
Like imitating women, you know, I'm thinking of a particular show in the morning where they start off at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're already popping wine, you know, and it's very cool.
So there's a media message right there
right
that
there,
is
10
saying,
o'clock in the morning.
that's targeting women, that says it's okay for you to be
Before
drinking.
noon.
At 10 a.m.
Right.
As we jump into this, I sit here and I keep on thinking, well, you know, when do you cross the line? What is one drink too many? You know, is it a drink before noon and that's not good? Is it a drink before the kids come home and that's not good? Is it that you must have a drink every day? Like, how do you even begin to think about whether or not this is crossing the line, excessive drinking?
Well, the recommendations right now for women is no more than one drink a day. That's
No more than one drink a day.
One alcoholic drink
so
or
7
wine?
in a week.
So I know, anyway.
No, hard liquor or wine?
So
or
that's a very good point. So people think that alcohol is different, whether it's a glass of wine, a beer, or a shot of whiskey. It's all the same amount of alcohol. It's still between 12 to 14 grams of alcohol, and it doesn't matter about the volume. It doesn't matter where it came from, whether it's from a grape or from a grain, meaning grape meaning from wine, or grain for beer and whiskey. But again, it's one drink. So it's 7 alcoholic beverages in a week is the maximum that you should be having as a woman, and 14 for men. That being said, as far as the time of the day, it's within a 24-hour period. Now, when you're using it as a coping mechanism, then you've got a problem.
When you're waking up and you're thinking about when you're going to be able to start drinking.
Or you get home and you're like,
Or does it sneak up on you more?
Yeah.
Like you were going to say, you get home and you've had a long day, so you use the alcohol to unwind?
and that's exactly what people are using it as, something to help them unwind from the day, and they think that's their treat. Just like, I mean, any kind of treat. You can say a chocolate chip cookie is a treat, or getting a massage is a treat.
Well, that's my point. We were talking earlier. What about the addictive personality? You know, there are certain people who might have a predisposition.
Do you believe that?
Is there such a thing, whether it's alcoholism, overeating?
Well, I think addiction is, you know, when you need to go to something external to help you cope with whatever issues
Do
you
you think
have
certain
now.
people have more of a predisposition toward that?
There is studies that show that there are people who have an addictive personality or an addictive, and they can transfer that addiction to anything. So we have a lot of people that are alcoholics that when they go off that, they go on to another
something
addiction,
else, right.
whether it's exercise, whether it's cookies, whether it's some sort of
But
other
that doesn't define
carbohydrate.
all alcoholics, or
No.
does? Yeah, it would.
I mean,
it would.
it's hard to say. I mean,
right.
that it's a lot of people will use that as a catch-all.
Absolutely, right.
And I'm thinking, so someone who's watching who says, well, I have 2 drinks, that doesn't necessarily make that person an alcoholic, does it?
Well, it depends. Alcoholism becomes an issue when it becomes a problem in your life. Is it causing relationship problems? Is it causing you problems for not going to work? Is it causing you to fall? Or is it causing you to have physical harm? Are you having medical issues because of it? Then it's a definite problem.
But is there tolerance? So, for example, if we start drinking, let's say 1 glass, and you know that 1 glass will all of a sudden is 2 glasses, and you're not getting that same kick from that 1
You'll
glass.
keep pushing it and pushing it, just like drug
So
abuse.
is that
You're
right?
going to keep chasing that
I guess
high.
that's like, to piggyback to Jennifer's point, is that where you've crossed the line? I need now 2 glasses.
Daniela, you've been trying to get in here. I've noticed it.
What is alcoholism versus just bad behavior, or a behavior where you can't check yourself, or where you're not monitoring how you're behaving? You know, is alcoholism like medical, or is it more psychological, if you just can't keep yourself in line?
It's a combination of both, because alcoholism is the disease state. Binge drinking is just when you're drinking a lot of alcohol back to back. And then you don't, so people will say that I don't drink all the time, I just binge drink, and they seem to think that that's okay. It's not okay. We do know that studies show that binge drinking causes more, if not the same amount of damage if you have steady amounts of alcohol.
Meaning if you had those 7 drinks
All on one
night,
day
as opposed
versus,
to the
right,
week.
because that's where someone will try to
That's
justify
a
it.
feeling or something that you're looking for if you're trying to get that wasted.
But you know, your guidance being 1 drink a day, I mentioned that to a friend, and they were like, well, I am not an alcoholic just because I have a drink a day. You know, I mean, and I think a lot of people might back, even though Brooklyn, I'm a non-drinker, but there are
This is where
Right.
it's getting a little skewed, because an alcoholic is different than someone who drinks every day.
okay.
So, you know, just because if you're having a glass of wine with dinner every night does not make you an alcoholic.
Right.
Makes you an alcoholic when you don't think you can cope for the rest of the day,
I
and you're
see.
looking for that glass of wine.
I see.
And it's likely going to be more than 1 glass
And
of
most,
wine.
exactly. It may be 1 bottle of wine.
So maybe if we pick up and just go with that point that you just talked about. What I heard in there was, sometimes it's not just how much you drink, but why you drink.
That's the question, is the
Right.
why are you drinking?
And that's really the kind of the tipping point, if you will. If you're on vacation, let's say, and it's a 7-day vacation and you're with friends, and so you're hanging out at the pool and you have a drink, and then you go out at night and you have a drink. That's not necessarily having too many drinks, right? But if, I'm just thinking, but if you're drinking because you know, your nerves are frayed.
I can't
Or-
speak to the person over across the room unless I have a drink.
I can't walk into
I
this
think that
room
those are
full of
dependency
people I don't
issues
know,
or
right?
insecurity, right?
Right.
Well, that's
So-
again, that's that whole social lubricant. That's what
Right.
I was saying. Alcohol makes boys talk to girls. Alcohol, you know, just loosens your inhibitions.
So Lisa, you were saying earlier in terms of alcohol being a social lubricant, if you will, isn't there a difference in terms of how our bodies react as women to alcohol and inhibitions and say how men react when they're drinking?
I think it's individual, but kind of more if you look at the global effects, I think men tend to get more aggressive when they're drunk, so that they'll be able to approach that woman across the bar. They may pick fights with people they would not normally pick fights with. With women, their inhibitions may be dropped so that they're more open to having flirting, or more open to having a relationship with someone, or allowing them to do whatever they want to do, and which is kind of scary, or very scary, I should say, because again, they're not making the right decision because they're kind of clouded. Their decisions are clouded. So.
But isn't that because they need a crutch, or, I mean, is that,
Well, you shouldn't need a crutch.
exactly, you should be yourself.
I honestly,
Well,
you
I mean,
shouldn't
in
be
some
that.
ways, that's easier said than done.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's, you know, so when we were talking about stressful situations, whether that's in the workplace or stressful social situations, I think we do need to think about how we develop healthier coping mechanisms, and we can't just tell someone, oh, you should just
have a glass of
not
wine.
have, or just not do that. You know, I think we sort of need to be thinking about that more broadly in terms
But
of
that, to your point,
behavior.
you can't pull out a glass of wine at work because you have to cope with someone, you know, so.
So
Well,
people may have drinks at
Work is very long now, so you may not do it at work, but what about these instances where people go, right, martini lunches or in the evenings, happy hours. And I was never one to go out for drinks after work with colleagues, but a lot of people do, and they get advancement that way.
Right, and that's the thing. So
And
if you in the workplace, you might think
The
that you
socialization
right,
of it.
so that then women and men may feel like if I don't socialize with the boss after work or socialize with the team, then I'm not going to get the promotion, or I'm not going to be able to have that sort of casual, hey, you know, get that informal relationship. And again, it doesn't mean that alcohol is the excuse, but I think we are socialized in that way.
Said, what I feel like I'm seeing more of is people who are very comfortable, you know, publicly saying, no, I don't drink. You know, I do not drink. No, I don't want to drink. More than I saw in years past.
Right.
You know, I remember seeing women in my younger years and when I graduated from law school who would take a glass and they'd nurse it the whole night. They'd hold it.
That was an art.
Right? An art, right? And now I see more people say, no, I don't drink.
I see a lot of cranberry and seltzer, and you think people are drinking, but they're not.
Yeah, but
I
how
see
do you
that.
how do you talk to someone that you suspect has a drinking problem though, or has one that is you know, because oftentimes we're around people where we know that there's an issue there, but we just kind of let
Or like
it go.
when my
you know?
girlfriend says that she has a glass of champagne every day
Right.
at 3 o'clock before the kids come home. That sounds like a problem to me.
Right. So what? So
She
you
thinks
she
it sounds
selling-
like status. And
Is she celebrating her kids coming home? Or?
Oh, is it a coping mechanism?
That sounds like Mother's Little Helper, like that old Rolling Stones song about women in the 60s
Right.
popping pills because
Right.
they couldn't cope with a boring life of leisure. Like that just sounds like they don't
but
feel
when
like
she
you have
talks
anything
about
to
it, it's
do.
like she's promoting it as it's
Right.
kind of
This
a
is
status
cool.
thing.
Right.
But I hear it as something different. I hear it as you've got to have a glass of champagne every day at 3 o'clock. I'm a little concerned. Should I be?
I think you should be concerned if she gets annoyed by you asking that question, because that's one of the signs that there's a problem.
if she gets defensive.
Interesting.
But you know, very few people don't get. I mean, that you know, that's you know, because that says a lot about possible. You know, they're thinking you're attacking character. You know, so.
Well, I can share this, that I had worked with a colleague who has since passed away, and he would come into work, and you would get in an elevator with him, and he actually reeked of alcohol, and he hadn't been drinking yet. So he would come into the office, And I remember one day he came in and his eyes were all bloodshot, but he kept this up, and he was a young man. He ended up passing away, I believe, at 40. Wow. And he drank every single day, and we talked about it. You know, we didn't want to go out after work. We would all be socializing together, and we would try to discourage his participation. But he felt, hey, if you guys are all going out, happy hour, as we discussed, he felt he had to be there. And of course, he couldn't stop, you know.
Well, talk to us a little bit about drunkorexia.
Yeah.
So yeah, drunkorexia is a very interesting term. So
I thought it was made up when I first heard drunkorexia, but
yeah, no, it's a term where it's more common in women, more common in college age women, where they're basically choosing their calories. So instead of having their calories with meals, they're having their calories with alcohol. So if they know they're going to be drinking, they won't eat because they don't want to, you know, consume extra calories so they don't get fat. The problem with that is A, they're not eating, and B, that alcohol is just going straight to their heads and they're getting drunker faster. Because any kind of fat or any kind of food actually helps to absorb some of the alcohol, or at least slows down the absorption of alcohol. So it's a problem. It's a big problem, because then if that becomes you know, a prolonged use, they're not getting their nutrition. They're going to have vitamin deficiencies. I mean, that's what happens with real alcoholics when, you know, they are not eating and their calories are just empty calories from alcohol.
I've seen people have 2 or 3 glasses, not of wine, but, you know, like hard alcohol, and French fries. So it's like in their mind, you know, well, I'll eat the French fries, you know, fatty, and and that'll hold me, and then I'll drink my calories. And then they'll go and they'll run the next day. And it's like, you know, and you see there's something's not quite right there. That's not nutritious. That's not a balanced meal. But in their minds, they're thinking, I'm managing this.
Yeah, managing it, I'm burning off all the calories by running everything off. Yeah, I mean, again, it becomes their trying to compensate for one behavior with the other behavior. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's very low nutritional value with French fries.
It just sounds like a sugar addiction to me.
Very
Like that
much
just
so.
sounds like little kids eating a bunch of Snickers and going crazy and then having a crash, right?
Like you hear a lot of young people drinking this brand because it's less calories, but at the same time doing what Jennifer described, where they're still going to have bad eating habits, but you're drinking Skinny Girl.
Right.
Would it be unfair to generalize? You know, as I sit here and I listen, I can't help but think, does excessive drinking, or the reasons for excessive drinking for women in general, look very different than excessive drinking for men? For men, is it more of a social, it's what we do when we watch the games? For women, is it what we do to cope? You know, is one more emotional and one more social, relational? Is that?
Yeah, I think with women, it is a social connection to have that bottle of wine where you're meeting with your girlfriends and you're gonna share a bottle of wine or whatnot. And I think it's still a social thing.
Conversations.
Yeah, I mean,
But
what about the women?
But isn't that different than, potentially different than, like, say, drink? I always sort of heard the thing, well, if you're drinking alone, that's a
Yeah, I was
problem.
just gonna
Whereas
say,
if
what
I'm
about the woman who
at a
drinks
group, or
alone?
if I'm at a meetup, or if I'm at a happy hour, whatever the social event is, I'm interacting with people versus I'm at home alone and I've polished off this bottle of Merlot.
I think that's what we need to clarify here. There's healthy drinking behavior and
Oh,
unhealthy
there
drinking
is healthy
behavior.
drinking. Okay.
In the sense of if you are having your one glass of wine or whatever with friends with dinner, it's all well and fine. It's not like are you waiting for that whole day just so you can get that high after, or that relaxation from that glass of wine, as opposed to you
Back
go
to the
home and you
triggers.
polish off a glass of or a bottle of wine on your own. Why is it that you are drinking alone? Do you really truly just enjoy the taste of it, or is it how it makes you feel?
Right. So it's looking at the why and the
At
reasons.
the why. The big issue is the why. Why is it that they're drinking?
And then, there's a lot of work, and we're going to talk about that in the next piece, a lot of work being done on the fact that a lot of women develop these habits in college. So we'll be back to discuss that. Well, we've been joined by Cynthia Francelon and Rocio Cuevas. Thank you, two ladies. Now, we brought you here for a reason. We want you to inform us about what is going on with drinking in college campuses. And we're going to start with you, Cynthia, and then we're going to move right over to Rocio.
Well, it seems as if drinking on college campuses has taken a more higher risk due to the fact that there are a lot of students, at least from what I've seen, a lot of students, especially when it comes to cramming for exams, they like to bring the alcohol to the classrooms sometimes.
What?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me.
There are very easy ways to hide alcohol.
But how can that help you on exam performance?
You know what? It's not even helping with the exam, but it's more
Denying
of
that
helping.
you're taking it, maybe? But go ahead.
It's helping with the anxiety of the exams, knowing that you are going to have to cram and you want to have to be able to stay up to keep yourself
But doesn't
studying.
alcohol put you to sleep?
Yeah.
Depending on how you are as, like how you can tolerate alcohol. Some people are
But
sleepy.
Pause also and say that bringing alcohol to an exam is irrational. So to think that maybe people
Right.
understand
Right.
Yeah.
what will result.
Yes.
It's scary. Like I know that they sometimes they take gummy bears and they soak it in vodka. So the gummy bear begins to soak up the vodka, and then you could just take it. You put it in the tin, and you can take it to class. You can pop it while it looks like you're eating candy, but in reality, it is soaked up in vodka, just to keep yourself from having to pay attention or just having to have the anxiety of knowing that you have a final exam coming up or you have a test, or even while you're studying, you want to be able to feel a little bit lightheaded and not have to worry about focusing on this because there's so much you have to focus on. So you take a little bit of alcohol just to get your mind off of that.
And that's
Topic.
working so much backwards. Because
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
it doesn't, if it worsens your concentration, it kills your memory. It's wrong at so many levels, it's frightening.
So then the anxiety is heightened.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You don't do well on the exams. Now you bring 2 bags of gummy bears to the next exam.
Exactly.
Because it's not working. How does this show up in the end? I mean, you have the exam now. You have all these gummy bears in your system. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result. If they're not doing well on the exams, why is this habit perpetuated? Why does it continue?
Well, you know what it is? The way alcohol is glorified, it's this means of escape. So they don't see it as what it is, which is just a beverage. They see it as, okay.
It's a drug.
Yeah, it's like they see it as a drug. They see it as a way of getting away from the anxiety. So if you have parents that are telling you have to do good in school or you have to perform like your brother or your sister, you don't want to have to hear that. You just want to be your own person. And when you have friends, when you have outside influences that are saying alcohol is the way to just be free and to enjoy yourself, you'll be very, very tempted to want to go toward that lifestyle, that to just do what you have to do to survive.
Did you see that as well?
I saw more of alcohol being a way to relieve stress and a way of celebration. So got an A, let's go drink. It's my birthday, let's go drink. The energy drinks was more of, I need to study, I'm gonna have an energy drink. Or I'm in class, I need to stay awake, I'm gonna have like Red Bull or Monster or something like that. But alcohol was definitely on my campus more about a reward. And people would come up with any reason to drink just because.
Not naming your institutions unless you so desire.
I wanted to, though, before we close, touch on this whole issue around sexual misconduct and alcohol. What are you seeing, or are you seeing that on your campuses, where people are drunk and then, inhibitions go, and what looks like is consensual may not have been consensual, but who knows?
I think definitely. It lowers your inhibitions, so you just do what feels right in the moment and you don't think about rationalizing it. And then afterwards, when you have time to think because you're sober, you're like, well, I was drunk, so
Oh, so you
that
give yourself an
happens.
excuse, huh?
That was.
What about you, Cynthia?
There was a case of, I don't know if this is too forward, but there was a case of gang rape on my campus. And it was during the festivities of homecoming. Now, for homecoming, we were a campus where the homecoming was at ours. It was so it was like an away campus, but we got to celebrate on our campus. So a lot of the times, you know, we all have fun, this and the third. And it was reported the next day that there was a girl who was gang raped by a few of the basketball players. And they left the scene. Unfortunately, there were a few that were caught. And, you know, the girl had to be taken out of school. She was so badly affected by it.
You know, I think that one of the things that is important for people to understand, maybe something that we should talk more with individuals, youth that are of college age, alcohol changes relationships.
Absolutely.
You know, just plain and simple, alcohol changes relationships. I had a situation when I was in college where I was just drinking wine coolers. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that that got me a little buzzed and I fell asleep. I didn't drink a lot, and like my family didn't drink, and so, but I fell asleep, and my friends went off to a party, and I woke up and, you know, a guy who shall go nameless was like on top of me. And I'll never forget thinking, how could my friends leave me vulnerable? And so I think that it's important for us always like to keep that in the back of our minds, whatever the age. Alcohol changes relationships.
Changes
And
mindsets.
it changes
also.
mindsets, it changes perception. It's good to be in your right mind.
Be aware.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cynthia. That's all the time we have for this episode of Brooklyn Savvy. But before we close, Dr. Lisa Ganjhu, thank you so much for helping us with this really important topic. And I'm hoping that our viewers will take up a deeper look at their alcohol consumption. But you can still have a drink every once in a while. And also, thanks, Rocio. Thank you so much for joining us. That's all the time we have for this episode of Brooklyn Savvy. See you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.